Yeah, Mary is so good at what she does. I love it when we see that she's human. So thank you. I don't know if that was on purpose or not. If you're like, let me show them or not. But this is our Monday, so we take a little vacation. We come back. I don't even know what the message is about today. I'm going to try to put it together right now. But if you're new or you're returning, maybe you're here just because you're like, this church has got good coffee, or maybe you're looking for a story to encourage or inspire you. I'm so grateful that you made it today as we wrap up July, as we are approaching the end of our Practicing the Way series, where we focused on this idea of a gratitude economy. And up to this point, we've been talking about the power of gratitude in our lives. And I hope you've played along. A couple weeks ago, we talked about this yes, but idea, which is where you just go about anything in your day, and it doesn't go the way you want it to, or you're not being treated the way you deserve to be treated, or things just aren't happening the way they should be happening. You go, and then you go, yes, but, and then you fill it in with a gratitude to that situation. You remind yourself that every good and perfect gift, that life is a gift, and you get to lean into it. So we kind of laid that gratitude foundation. And then last week, if you weren't here, one of our former staff, Katie Colin, was here. And it's a phenomenal message as we shift from gratitude into the generosity that exists in the gratitude economy. So if you can go to Spotify, you can go to iTunes, you can hop on YouTube, but please, I would really encourage you, if you've been following along with this series at all, listen to what Katie had to say about a life of generosity. And then I'm going to pick up on that today and kind of give like a mundane cliche, so what does it mean conversation for us. So I hope you're super excited for a mundane cliche morning as we come together. The foundation, though, for this whole series has been around this idea. James, the leader of the church in Jerusalem, the half-brother of Jesus, who did not believe in Jesus' claims to being the Savior of the world as Jesus lived and as Jesus died. But when James encountered the resurrected Jesus, he believed. He believed that his brother, and I'd asked, like, how many of you have siblings? What would it take for your sibling to convince you they were God? And there was a chuckle in the room, because we all know there's no way they could convince us of that. And yet James believes that Jesus is the resurrected Savior of the world. James says this, just a little snapshot. He says, don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. And it's got this warm, familiar, like, my dear family, don't be deceived. Every good and perfect gift is from above. And we're going to continue in that idea as we take another step in our generosity economy conversation. But I need you to think back to the last time someone gave you a gift. And here's what I mean by gift. Not like socks or a $5 Starbucks card. I mean something that was kind of over the top. Maybe it kind of knocked you over. It was an undeserved kind of gift. Maybe it was that thing that you thought you would never get for Christmas when you were a kid, and you did, and it blew your mind. So think back to that. Here's your opening question, all right? Think back to the last time someone gave you a gift. Like a truly surprising, undeserved, over-the-top gift. Just how did you respond? That's what I want to know. Share it to the person next to you. How do you respond when you get a gift that blows your mind? We'll be back in 1 minute. All right, take 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that how you responded was just this like natural outflow of what we would call gratitude. It didn't require calculation. Like I've talked about, I have a family of 4 kids, my wife and I, family of 6, and how slow our Christmas mornings would go, because Emily and I were always like, we need to teach gratitude. So every single gift that was opened, every single kid had to walk across the circle and be like, thank you, and then didn't matter what the gift was. That takes a long time. That's 6 people, every single gift going back and forth, and it still kind of happens. And now we have 2 daughters-in-law, and my family gives a lot of books at Christmas, so like stacks of them. So this is a lot of like, thank you for the gift. Thank you for the gift. I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, we are all thankful. Let's open more presents right now, right? Because gratitude is this like response that just bubbles up. You don't have to calculate it. When you receive that gift, I bet you didn't go, what's the appropriate response right now? Well, I should be thankful because that's a good thing to do. And how should I be thankful? You probably started like vibrating, if you were a child, like vibrating out in your arms, and then vocalization came out, and your family had the camera out, and it's just like, you didn't know what to do, right? Because gratitude allows us to spend less time calculating and honestly more time celebrating. And that's what I want. That's what I want for us. That's what I want for me. I want my life to be a life that's not calculated in response, but it's just full of celebration. And I believe God is inviting us into that through this practice of generosity. Robert Emmons, who's kind of a leading researcher on gratitude, about just over a decade ago, he released a book called Thanks, How the New Science of Gratitude Can Make You Happier. This is what he found in his research. He said, just look at this. Gratitude blocks toxic emotions, such as envy, resentment, regret, and depression. It's impossible to feel envious and grateful at the same time. That's a really bold statement, but I would certainly like to test it in my life. I would love to put this to the test. Is Dr. Emmons getting at something that God has built into the fabric of the world in my life and your life to say, you're missing something. All these toxic emotions are finding a foothold, and there's a solution right in front of you. Every moment, every day, you have access to it. Another author, Ann Voskamp, says this: a life of contemplating the blessing of Christ. I think this is another way of saying what Robert Emmons says. A life of contemplating the blessing of Christ becomes a life of acting the love of Christ. Do you hear that? Slowly, bit by bit, the more we appreciate the life that God has given us, we appreciate the gift that Jesus Christ is to all people, the less calculating we become. And the more life becomes filled with gratitude and celebration. It reminds me about a conversation Jesus had where someone came to him and they said, Jesus, what's the big life? What's the good life? What's the meaning of life? What's the most important law in life? And Jesus, many of you are familiar with this interaction, Jesus said, I'm so glad you asked. It is this: you are to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. And you should expect a religious leader to say that, right? I mean, that's kind of their thing. And then he turns, though, and remember what he says on the other side? And you love your neighbor as yourself. So this was an interesting verse to reflect on, because I was just on vacation last week in California, and on our Uber ride, our driver was from Turkey, and at one point he looked over at me and he said, what is love? That's a really interesting question to have with an Uber driver, but he was a very thoughtful man, and he was philosophical, and he was thinking, and he was reading great authors, and he said, what is love? And I said, I can tell you what I know. Jesus was asked the same question. And he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. I said, here's the twist, though. Then someone asked him, who's my neighbor? Like how, okay, so I can do that, but like the people I like, right? I mean, I chose to live in this neighborhood. We have common interests. Our kids go to school together. Hopefully we're friends. And Jesus said, I'm going to tell you a story about a guy named the Good Samaritan who loved his enemy. And Jesus extended love all the way to your enemies. It's very distinct in the Christian ethic that you love God, you love your neighbor, you love your enemy. And I share that with you because that's Jesus is saying this is what life is. So in essence, I want to give you a poorly written math formula for this. Those of you that are mathematicians, please ignore my slight misuse of the delta function, okay? So love God. So triangle delta is a change agent. It means these two are correlated or connected, and when one happens, it impacts the other one. As one increases, the other one will either increase or decrease. Or as the other one increases or decreases, so you kind of see what the triangle is. It's change, delta, change. As we love God, so we love others. Love God, delta, love others. And this is really important as we think about generosity, as we're going to hear what the Apostle Paul says in a little bit. A change in loving God results in a change in loving others. So maybe you're in a place where you've gone, I want to have this big heart, and I want to work through some of these painful things, and I want to be able to express gratitude in all places. I want to be known as a generous person. And you're going, but I'm struggling. Well, love God, and as you increase in your love for God, you will find your love of others increases. But the inverse is true. As you increase your love for others, you'll naturally find that your love for God expands and your love for God grows. There's a causal relationship. As we contemplate the love of God, we will be able to more completely love others. So another way to kind of frame this then, so what does this look like for us in this series? Gratitude and generosity are also in this causal delta relationship. As we increase in gratitude, you know what results? Increased generosity with your time, with your talent, and with your treasure. The more grateful you are, the less scarcity you live with. And this, so you should know, as we come into a generosity conversation, I've shared my background a little bit. I grew up fairly poor, okay? And that led to a real concern or scarcity mindset, that there will never be enough. And by enough, I mean like a place to sleep or food on the table. Okay? So that reality for me led to this perspective of like, if I get a little bit, keep it. And if I get a little bit more, keep that because I deserve it. There are people who have more than they need and I have less than I need. So I need to hold on to what I have. And then I become a follower of Jesus and I'm learning about the way of Jesus, but I'm unwilling to let go of this scarcity. It's built into my bones. And I marry this woman who is got a very different perspective on this from me. She's like, no, you're a follower of Jesus. You just live a generous life. It's not about how much you have. It's about, and she started to bring me into these practices. You know, I've shared this before. My college roommate, we've now graduated. He's starting an after-school program for kids on the street, and he stops by our house. He's just telling us about it. And Emily gets out our checkbook and writes him a check. And I'm like, oh, it's like $5 for Jim. Good job, babe. And it's $300. Now today I'm like, that was rent. Okay, I guess I'm old, but that was $300 went to Jim, and I thought, where's our rent money gonna come from? And I felt that scarcity creep in on my life, but she was teaching me. An increase in gratitude leads to an increase in generosity. An increase in generosity will bring about in your life an increase in gratitude. If you feel you're struggling with gratitude, I want to challenge you this morning, real simply. Go look at how generous you are with your time and your thoughts and your resources and your money. Go look at it. And if you find it's tight, my guess would be that your gratitude struggles also. That these two have a correlation. And bit by bit, I just learned and I trusted and I watched. And I started to listen to Jesus and I started to go, oh, it's not only that Jesus is, excuse me, like the one who sets me free. Jesus is showing me how to live. Now, with the breath I have in my lungs, I got to walk this out and figure this out. So maybe then, if you're new to church or you're visiting today or this is kind of something you're coming back to, maybe you left the church because you're like, oh, the way they talked about money, they weren't trustworthy. I didn't know, like there was no transparency. There was misuse of money, or they made me feel guilty. They made me feel bad. So I want to be mindful of that as you come here. And if I'm in your shoes, I might go, okay, here's the goal of this series. Spend 3 weeks talking about gratitude. We all like gratitude. And now I got you hooked. It's time to have the giving message. And at the end of the giving message, you all have to give because you're grateful. That's a horrible strategy, by the way. And that's not what we're doing today. You would see right through that. So walk with me, take a breath real quick and go, okay, we have something, just like Carlos had something to learn, we have something to learn from Jesus about how we live our lives with money, right? And our goal is to follow Jesus here. That's the bottom line. To deepen our faith and relationship with him so we can love our neighbors and so we can reach the next generation. So we have this conversation because spiritual growth without generosity is self-deception. I'll give you a minute to write that down if you're taking notes. If you're not, I'd still encourage you to write it down because we are made to be spiritual people. And if spiritual growth is what we desire, we don't want to be deceived about how that works. Spiritual growth without generosity is self-deception. You're ignoring the change agent that lives in the middle and trying to have something that you desire and that you want without seeing the fruit of something produced in the process. Here's the good news. We are so in this together. There's not a person here or online with us right now, or who will watch later, or myself. There's not a person here who doesn't have to wrestle with thoughts about gratitude and generosity, often on a daily basis. All right, because we're a pretty diverse community. Some of you, like when we talk gratitude, you're talking about like donor-advised funds and resources you have and things there. Others of you, when we talk about gratitude, you're like, all I got is debt. What kind of gratitude what kind of generosity do you want in that conversation? So let's just step into this and say that the goal of a right relationship with money is spiritual transformation. That's from Jesus. Jesus said, don't store up for yourself treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. Some of you are familiar with this teaching. It's from his Sermon on the Mount. He says, store up for yourself treasures in heaven where moths and vermin don't destroy and where thieves don't break in and steal. And he says this, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Treasure, money, anything that's commodified, time, talent, treasure is a heart issue. And our heart issues are spiritual issues. They have to do with a life of following Jesus. Jesus ends with these words. He says, no one can serve two masters. Either you'll hate the one and you'll love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and you'll despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. If that was important enough for him to say, then we should dig into what it looked like in the early church for those first followers of Jesus, because generosity was a heart issue. It was not a money issue. And so Paul, last week, and again, I just doubled down on this. You got to catch Katie's message, okay? She was like pruning plants up here and passing out dead flowers. It all had a point, though. The point was this gift of abundant, generous living is a gift Christ has for us. And she talked about Paul's letter to this church in Corinth, a church in a really great city with a lot of opportunity, had these new people following Jesus. These are the first generation of Jesus followers. Well, they had money and they didn't have money. They didn't know what it meant to be a follower of Jesus and how that tied in. So Paul instructs them. She gives a great teaching on that. We're going to jump back into that letter, 1 Corinthians. We're going to be in chapter 16, verse 1. Now, about the collection for the Lord's people, do what I told the Galatian churches to do. So this is instruction on how to follow Jesus in the city you live in the time you live in, with the resources that you have. About the collection for the Lord's people, do what I told the Galatian churches to do. And here's the instruction. And I love, this is actually quite mundane, and it's a bit cliche, but some cliches are good because they anchor our lives. They take very complex things, and they put them in a way we can wrap our hands around them. On the first day of the week, each of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with your income, saving it up so that when I come, no collections will have to be made. So let me divide us, the unfair division, into a couple groups of people right now. If you're a follower of Jesus, Paul is speaking directly to you. The scriptures are for you to take and to learn from, to learn how to walk in the Spirit and to follow Jesus in all things. This is straight up for you, your bank account, your credit cards, your savings accounts, everything, right? If you're not a follower of Jesus, this is for you, but your first step is not this. It is to put your life in the hands of Jesus. All right, so that's your journey. But I'll say this, but generosity is good for you. So you can hear all of this, and I give you permission. Don't think about it in terms of church. Think about it in terms of life, nonprofits you're passionate about, causes that you want to pour your life into. All of us should be generous, but this Paul is speaking to followers of Jesus right here. And he's going, I'm giving you the bare foundation for how we are to live. On the first day of the week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with your income. Save it up so that when I come, no collections will have to be made. It's not random. It's not reactive. It's not like a leftover thing he's getting at. He's saying it's a decision. Each of you has a plan. And this plan is about your new life in Christ. And we find that the foundation of the teaching to the new Christian centers on this idea. It centers on prioritize. Your treasure has one principle: give first. Most of us, at least most of the people I know, we've inverted that principle to live first and give last. try to live in such a way that there might be some that we can be generous with at the end. Now, last week, Katie talked about when she really had nothing but a car. And so she said, all I have is this car. God, would you generously use my car to bless others? And how she she was out of gas money, driving people everywhere. So this is really be creative as you hear this and think about this. What happens here, prioritize is to give first. The way to find the joy in generosity, right? And there can be joy in it. I've learned that. My wife started to teach me that. I've learned that throughout my own life. There can be joy in generosity is to give first. And then if what I'm going to say next is new to you, then just kind of take it in. Or if it's not new to you, but it's not what you're doing in your life, then take a deep look at why, okay? Because the path to financial freedom, some of you are financial planners. These are not financial strategies, like which market should you be in crypto right now, that type of thing, okay? That's not, I sold my 1/100th of a Bitcoin I had at 60, and I wish I hadn't, right? It'd be worth like $200 now. So I'm not a financial advisor. You don't want financial advice from me. I can hold a good budget. We steward the resources of this church well, but that's not what this is about. This is like the foundation for human living with money in your pocket, with resources in your hands. This is a 2,000-year-old conversation, not a new issue. It's a human heart issue. It's always been around. And so the path to financial freedom, which is part of a life of joy and generosity, because if you don't feel free, like I didn't, when your wife writes that $300 check to your friend who's doing something to help kids on the street, right? That when she writes that check, your chest constricts and you feel afraid. What if I need that? That's not joy. That's fear, right? So there is a path to this. It's linear. Give, save, and live. You give first, you save next, and then you live on what's left. I hope the financial planners in here appreciate how I simplified that down. There is more to this, but that's our foundation. So we would look at it, if we take Paul's, what he writes about, he says, on the first day of the week, based on your income, set aside what you have predetermined. So it kind of would look like this. Give first, you prioritize a percentage. I want to be, it's going to throw some of you sideways here, okay? I want to be really clear. I don't know if I've ever firmly just said this. I'm a Christian. Okay, I've said that. I'm a Christian. I'm also a pastor. You knew those two things. My whole life, I have listened to very strong teaching in the church that Jesus requires you to give 10%. And I've scratched my head and went, what? You mean the guy who gave us a new law that sets us free said, I just got one law you got to keep, 10% of your money, okay? That is, for those of you who are Bible students, go back and you got to do some study and dig in here. I'm not trying to put down those of you who are tithers. That's called a tither, a 10% giver, but I found a couple things. One, for some of you, it's so far out there you don't even know what to do. You're like, how am I supposed to go from 0 to 10%? Is it net or gross? I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Can I take out my 401k and for what? And then those of you that go, I did my 10%. Thank you, Jesus, for loving me so much. Thank you that you love me more than those who don't give their 10%. So if you think about that, now I just put my chips on the table. Jesus does not give you a percentage you must give. He gives you a call to a heart that is free from money. And that heart will look like outrageous generosity. Some of you give more, well beyond 10%. Some of you have great means and you do that. Some of you have very little means and you give well beyond that. Let's not limit ourselves. And let's not give ourselves a new law that makes us think this is what puts us in good standing with Jesus. Prioritize, give first. A percentage. So what's our practice? It's kind of been setting a 10% standard because I'm kind of greedy. And if I don't set a standard, I'm probably going to go lower myself. I'm just going to end up saying I need a little more money. I got to save a little more. There's some things I want to do with my family. So that 10% becomes a standard for me, not what I'm teaching to you, okay? Prioritize, give first. Percentage, give a percent. That's what Paul says. He says, set aside an amount that you have decided you'll set aside. That's just a percentage. And here's the hard part, progressive. Be open-handed because as you have more, you give more. So you give first, not only when you're feeling it, you pick a percentage, which makes that giving very real, and you're progressive in your giving, which means as your life grows, your generosity grows. This is the hard part. It was not hard for me when I was like a poor college kid, paying my way through school, to go to church, and they would pass, the little offering plate would come by, and I'd take out like a 1 and be like, bang. Right? I'd feel good about myself because all I had was $10. I was giving 10%. I mean, that's pretty awesome, right? Then I became a school teacher. I got my first paycheck, and I was like, well, the 1's still good, right? Because this is a lot of money I have now, which is funny to say as a school teacher at the time. But I was like, this is a lot of money that I have. And I realized you've got to grab hold of what Paul is saying about this progressive part. If you don't, you will rob yourself of the joy. You will encounter this, which you already know. Doesn't matter how much you have. It never feels like it's enough. It just doesn't. It just never feels. You can go look at your accounts and go, everything I dreamed and set out to do so that I could retire the way I wanted to and bless my kids the way I wanted to, or get into school the way I wanted to, or buy the house the way I want. Once you see that, I don't know anyone that goes, my job's done. The needle moves. Somehow there's got to be more. You need more. There's got to be more security, more safety. And so the progressive piece, you got to add that in. So as your income changes, your generosity changes. That was so hard for me to learn when you have a scarcity. I no longer have a scarcity. I still have a little scarcity mindset, but not like I used to, okay? It's so hard when your income changes, when you have 2 working people, when you start to go, oh, we have a lot of money here, but we also have a lot of bills. We have a lot we need to prepare for. I've got 4 kids. That's 4 colleges. That's a lot happens there, right? So when you have a 10, it's $1 if you just stick with that 10%. If you have 100, it's 10. We could all do that, right? If you have 1,000, it's 100. Well, it's like, all right, I do that. If you have 10,000, it's 1,000. Okay, I can be generous. Then you make your first 100,000. You're like, 10,000? That's like a vacation to Hawaii. And for a week, for 2, right? The progressive part's so important. So take a look back at what Paul says. He says, on the first day of the week. That's what I'm trying to get at here, is what he instructed followers of Jesus to do with their resources. On the first day of the week, each of you should set aside a sum, a percentage that you have prepared in advance, in keeping with your income. So everyone's different in the room that Paul's talking to, in keeping with your income. And here's what's so wild about this. Up until this point, if you were blessed with resources, which generally meant you were blessed with birth, what you were born into, if you had resources, you were more special than those who didn't. And it was evident. You would be a patron of everything. Buildings would have your names on them. Streets would be named after you. People would come to you over and over and over for your protection, and they put themselves in servitude to you. And Paul goes, that's gone. Guess what? Those of you who are rich, on the first day of the week, each one of you should set aside a sum of the money in keeping with your income. And then those of you who are poor, on the first day of the week, each of you should set aside a sum of your... Everyone is included in the life of generosity. That is a special project. I think we're kind of all feel that's how it should be now, but Paul introduces this special project. Now, last week, Katie talked about Paul challenging this Corinthian church. He said, you guys, you got to learn from the churches in Macedonia, and specifically he references the Galatian church. I'm going to take you to 2 Corinthians. So there's 2 letters to the Corinthians. 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. They're both written to the same church. This church is my favorite church because the letters are very sassy. There's a lot of tension going on. It sounds like they a little bit don't respect Paul's letters when they come, so he has to double down on why they should. And in the midst of it, you can feel his heart for this church, though, his love for them. And so we're going to go into 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Paul comes back a year later. He writes them again. And look what he says. This is a year from what Katie talked about last week. And here is my judgment about what is best for you in this matter, in the matter of generosity. Last year, you were the first not only to give, but also to have the desire to do so. So what Katie talked about last week, the church in Corinth was like, yes, we didn't know this. We want this freedom and this joy that comes with generosity that flows from our gratitude. And they just began to practice it. Paul references that here. He says, last year, you were the first not only to give, but also to have the desire to do so. Now look what he says. Now finish the work so that your eager willingness to do it may be matched by your completion of it according to your means. For if the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. Let's just unpack this a little bit. I love this eager willingness. Paul's highlighting, and some of you know this feeling, you have this eager willingness to be generous. You can't wait for opportunities for generosity. There's a group that meets in Treasure Valley called 100 Men for Good. There's another group for women. I see some people in this room who are part of that group. It's just a group of men that get together. They all pay a portion. They pay like a due, and then 3 local nonprofits are pitched in essence, and then it's a vote, yes, no, which one? And then one of those nonprofits receives a check from this group of just men who live in Treasure Valley, and this is racking up to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars going to local nonprofits. I love that approach. Is you get around this room with these guys, and you just experience this like excitement about generosity. All right, I see the same thing with our 4th Sundays for the city. Like, we come together, we'll bring them back in August. We put a bunch of our partners up on the wall in the lobby so you can kind of see who our local partners are. And we come and we say, hey, look, $4 a person. Do you want in? And people jump in. Many of you, it's the one way that you participate in giving, and that's good because you go, I'm here, I want this. And we write a check for $5,000 to a local nonprofit that's doing such good. We help them go further faster. There's this eager willingness. It's very different than, I'm a dad, so I'm going to give you a parenting example. Then when you ask your child to take out the garbage, and they say, okay, and the garbage is still there. Paul's saying, no. I'm not asking you to say, yes, I'll be generous. What I love is that you take the garbage out. Not only did you say you would, you were willing to. You actually did the work. This obviously extends beyond parenting relationships. You know this in your dating relationships, in your marriage, in your work relationships. There's nothing more frustrating than someone who expresses a willingness and doesn't act on that willingness. And you always stay right where you are. It's one of the great struggles in marriage with conflict resolution, is it feels like we talk really good, but we never go anywhere. Because the same thing comes up, we have the same conversation about it, and nothing changes. You express the willingness, and we are still stuck. So Paul starts out and he says, I love that you actually bring it to completion. But then he says back to this transformational idea, according to means, even when you're upside, and this, I feel this so strongly because I grew up upside down financially. If you're upside down financially, and that has led to you saying, I need to be on the receiving end, not on the giving end, you are robbing yourself of a gift God wants to give you. An increase in your generosity will lead to an increase in your gratitude for the life that you have. I lived in that season. I don't any longer. So maybe it's easier for me to say this. I lived in that season. I mean, my first job as a youth pastor, we made $24,000 a month. I had one kid, one on the way, and we had no medical insurance. $24,000 a year. Thank you, Shayla. Most of you were like, dang. I'm really glad one of you is listening. $24,000 a year, 2 kids. I'm not like 120, okay? 2 kids, no health insurance. You know how easy it would have been to go, this is not our time to be generous. This is our time to make sure that we can pay our medical bills. And Paul isn't strong-arming people to say, come on, you poor people, do more. He's just saying everybody has an opportunity to contribute through generosity to the good life. Everybody. Look what he continues to say. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give. It's my favorite line on all giving. I wish we talked less about 10% tithing and more about this. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. So how do you get there? How do you be this? It's kind of idealistic, isn't it? I mean, how do I practice generosity and be a generous person and live into this? And I think the key here is all about pre-decision. It's what Paul said on the first day of the week. Set aside that predetermined amount and ask yourself in your relationship with God, am I like, God, can I trust you with this? Can I feel a joy in this generosity? And I think generosity at its core is a pre-decided behavior. It's not a reactive behavior. And it's not an emotional behavior. It is something that you have set out and said, bottom line, my life will exist this way generously. I'm going to serve in this way with my time. And if that opportunity falls to the side, I'm going to find a new one. I'm going to give in this way. I'm going to be a resource. I'm going to coach and mentor people in this way. I'm just going to show up in this way. I've pre-decided. And here's the good news about this. We all want to be generous. Like, I feel pretty confident that everyone in this room would love to be known and to feel like you're a generous person. And maybe more importantly, we all want to live around generous people. I mean, you want to date someone who's generous. There's probably going to be a point where in your dating relationship, everything you do, they just look at you and go, initially it's great because they're good looking and you like spending time with them, and but then after a while, you start to go, wait, aren't we in a mutual thing here? Like, you have a job, I have a job. Let's talk. We want to date people who are generous. We want our kids to grow up to be generous. We want coworkers who are generous. We want to be in an HOA that's generous. We want to be in a city that's generous. We want our everything about us. We want our children to marry people who are generous. I mean, that's just what we want. Maybe we don't put it in those terms. I don't know. Until this sermon, I didn't walk around thinking this. But then I realized I did all the time. We all want to be generous because we're made in the image of God, who's beyond generous, who in his generosity gave his one and only Son, that whoever would put their trust in him would have life. Not only life eternal, but would have full life in this life. Like, this invitation from this generous God. And I think that then we have to push beyond emotional giving to pre-decided giving. And here's how I define the two. Because I'm a pretty good emotional giver. Like Sarah McLachlan, Arms of an Angel, and the dogs on TV. Like, that's I don't even like dogs that much. And all of a sudden I'm like, I should give some money to some dogs. Emotional giving is reactive. And it is a very effective way to generate fundraising. Here's a story that will break your heart. And if you have a pulse and you're going to do something about it, and you engage, and it feels good. It feels like you did good. And then it goes away. Pre-decided giving is proactive. Here's how I live generously. Oh, there's a need? Fantastic. I have already determined that I have these resources that are going to go to these needs, and I cannot wait to cut you a check. Both give. It's just how and why. Emotional giving, let's just say the greatest emotional cause of all time drops in front of you. And you're trying to decide between a new car, you got money, I've been saving up for this car, you got a new car, and this huge need drops in front of you, and you're having a bad day. I think what you do is you're like, that's an awesome need. Someone else can take care of it today, because today I deserve something, because I'm having a bad day. And I'm going to get myself that car I've been saving up for, and I really want, Emotional giving is just a trap. We want to be really careful. Pre-decided giving is proactive. Emotional giving is occasional. Pre-decided giving is a way of living. So if you want to be generous, we're not waiting for a moment. We're making a plan. And it looks like this. A generous, pre-decided giver gives first, gives a percentage, and is willing to give more. And again, let me go back to, one of these is a conversation for us as a church community. If you're suspicious about the conversation, I am not at all saying give to Eastwind. You've been incredibly generous, congregation. We're out of debt. We've saved a great amount of money. We're looking at expansion, and there was a real generous response to what that's going to look like. We continue to be able to save money to create more space here. I look at all that and I go, no, just give. Make a plan and give. Test it somewhere else. Just give. And then come tell me, you wouldn't believe I started giving to this group or this church, and I'm starting to experience the power of this pre-decided giving. Give first. Give a percentage. Give more. Because remember, we don't want to be deceived. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. You don't really own it. You just manage it. It is all a gift from above, from your heavenly Father. And so Paul later in that letter to Corinthians, he ends this way. 3 times he repeats himself. And I'm going to end with this, just so you can see kind of the power of this generosity, gratitude relationship. 2 Corinthians 9:11, he says this. Here's what's going to happen. You will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. Rich and poor, those with means and those without. You'll be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. And through us, your generosity will result in gratitude. People are going to experience a life of gratitude because of your generosity. Your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. And maybe because Paul's like, I don't know if they got it. Let me say it a different way. Next verse. This service that you perform is not only supplying the needs of the Lord's people, but is also overflowing in many expressions of gratitude. Thanks to God. Your generosity is causing this overflow in people's lives of gratitude. And then, because he's not done, he says one more time, because of this service by which you have proved yourself, he's talking about their new practice of generosity over the last year. Others will praise God for the obedience that accompanies your confession of the gospel of Christ, your new faith, and for your generosity in sharing with them and with everyone else. And Paul says, think about it. You're not just writing a check. You're not just setting up a draft. You're writing a story. You're writing a story for somebody. A story of life change and hope. A story where someone encounters that they fit in God through Jesus Christ. You're helping write that story. You're writing a story where someone is getting help and job training and education and job placement skills. You're writing a story where with Chrysalis House, women coming out of a life of addiction and incarceration are being given an opportunity, not only at new life, but if you follow the Chrysalis House stories, one of our partners, most of these women have lost their children and they get their children back. Now, that is a good story right there. That's the kind of story that you're writing with your generosity. I think about just like in our little setting right here, our high school group just got back from camp. A huge crew went, like 90 people went along, and a bunch of adults took a week off of vacation to go spend it with high school students. That is a generous action. And they are writing a story. We talked about these fans that are above you right now. These fans that the church member was in here one day, it was super hot, and we talked about, they said, let me help you, and they helped us get these fans in, and they did it at an incredible cost. And it was like they're writing a story, not of like, that story means more, there's a little more comfort as you sit in this space, and you don't have to fan yourself the whole time, and you can maybe pay attention for a little more. I don't know, right? There's so many ways. Our new county fair parking lot in the back. That parking lot was put in a lot of hard work by a few people, made that accessible so that you don't have to fight for a parking spot. See, these are generosity stories. They just happen over and over and over. Because God doesn't want your money. He doesn't want your time. God desires your heart. And your heart can't have two masters. So he's offering you a way out. Because he knows where your treasure goes, there your heart will follow. So, if you want to experience the joy of generosity and the freedom that comes from, a joy that it's taken me decades of learning to kind of live into it, and I've had, like my spouse has helped teach me that along the way, right? Don't wait for a moment to go, all right, I'm going to act. Leave today and go, okay, I'm going to make a plan based on my means, and maybe I'm just going to go to 1%. Because that feels like a scary stretch. Or maybe I stopped at 10 because I thought I was cruising, but I just got cash like it literally falls out of my pockets. I'm just gonna be more generous. And hear me. And I think someone out there probably can't stand when I say this, because we want to do well as a church and thrive as a church, but it doesn't have to be here. And that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to practice a life of generosity. We'll hear the stories of goodness wherever it happens. All right? Wherever it happens. So I want to give you a question to reflect on as we close. As we think about like the opportunity we have in front of us, we just know that this is what God can do. Just take a look at that, right? He can free us from deception. He can develop a generous heart in us, and we can see gratitude in others. So to get to that place, to see that happen for you and I, let's just spend a moment and reflect on that, right? Think about your relationship with money. Is it grateful? And think about the pattern of your giving. Is it generous? And would you say you're pre-decided or just delayed right now and you hadn't maybe considered that? And then we'll sing a closing song.
If I could unlearn it all, where would you want to stay? If I could unfind myself, exchange. If I've been wrong and missed the mark, would you show me a better way? 'Cause I've been holding